Mhm. Cool. Okay. Well, hello everyone, and welcome to another webinar. My name is Aaron Essery, Extension Specialist for Viticulture and Enology here at Oklahoma State University. Today we're going to talk about grapevine rootstocks, grafting and own-rooted. So a little history on the rootstocks of grapevines, grafted vines that is. So up until the mid 1800s, all European Vitis vinifera vineyards were own rooted. I mean, really, even before that, throughout the millennia, everybody just own rooted everything. Well, what happened was a little insect called phylloxera was accidentally introduced into European vineyards by the importation of American grapevines. So phylloxera is native to the US and American rootstocks are tolerant to it. Well, when we started shipping vines back to Europe, this insect went with it, and the European vines were not resistant to it at all. It was a foreign pathogen. So phylloxera got into European vineyards and almost decimated the entire industry over there. Phylloxera feeds on the roots and leaves of grapevines. And like I say, we imported some grapes back to Europe carrying this phylloxera pathogen, and it nearly destroyed all European vines because Vitis vinifera vines have no natural resistance to phylloxera. A man by the name of T.V. Munson discovered that if you graft American rootstocks onto European scions, that would make the grapevine tolerant to phylloxera. He did this, he showed everyone it was resistant to phylloxera. Everybody in Europe started grafting American rootstock onto their vines, and the European wine industry was saved. And grafting has become a very common practice today because of that. And so we will talk about the different grapevine rootstocks in this presentation. Here is phylloxera. It's a little tiny, almost microscopic insect. It's very, very, very small. It feeds on the roots. It will feed on the leaves too, but mostly the roots. And that's just kind of an up-close image of what it looks like. Just a little yellow bug, causes havoc, kills vines, This is phylloxera. Okay, so how to select a rootstock? We always hear, there's so many rootstocks. What even are they? How do you select one? Well, it really all depends on your site. Rootstocks are very specific to soil type, soil fertility, soil drainage, salt tolerance, lime tolerance, drought tolerance. There's many, 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 many factors that influence rootstock selection, and we're gonna kind of sort of uncover them, unpack them the best we can here. But you got sandy soil, you got clay soil, you got calcareous soil, you got a high soil pH, a low soil pH. All of these make a difference in your rootstock selection. Okay, so rootstock species. I'll kind of talk about where the rootstocks, how they came and how they came to be bred, and then I'll kind of cover the different specs each rootstock will cover. So many rootstocks are native to North America. That's because they're phylloxera tolerant. Some are very resistant, some are less resistant, but North American grapevine species have a good tolerance to phylloxera. That's why we started breeding them to get the rootstock. So um, you breed plants, we all know that. You cross-pollinate flowers and pollen and you get a new breed. Well, when you do this, different rootstocks will form as well. And so that's kind of what we'll cover here. So some very common species for rootstock breeding include Vitis riparia, Vitis berlandierii, Vitis rupestris, and Vitis champagni. I think that's how you pronounce it. I'm not sure, but I'm going to say champagni. And we'll talk about these a little more in detail. Okay, so Vitis rupestris. This is a particular species of grapevine that is native to the Americas. You see, so Vitis rupestris. This is Vitis rupestris, not Vitis vinifera. Vitis vinifera is the European grape. Vitis rupestris is a American grape. These grapevines have deep roots into the soil. A long growing season, very vigorous growth. They are tolerant to both heat and cold, resistant to phylloxera naturally, and they're very easy to propagate. So I'm talking about the whole vine here. This presentation is about rootstocks, but you get rootstocks through breeding, right? And you breed through flower and pollen. So Vitis rupestris, also known as the sand grape or the July grape, native to the Americas, this grapevine is usually selected in the grapevine breeding program for these reasons. So Vitis rupestris makes a nice rootstock. Another grapevine that is used for rootstock breeding, Vitis berlandierii. I think that's how you pronounce it as well, Belendieri. Strong plunging roots, very drought tolerant, um, tolerates low winter temperatures, which is a good thing in Oklahoma, and again is resistant to phylloxera. The common name is the Spanish grape. Belendieri is used in like 1103p, amongst others. I'll get to there too. But this is another Native American grapevine that is selected in its breeding program for rootstock. Hey Bob, welcome. I'm gonna mute you. Nothing personal. Okay. Vitis riparia. This is another Native American grapevine selected for grapevine breeding, also known as the riverbank grape. Prefers cool, fertile soils, well adapted to cold climates with short growing seasons. So maybe even, Minnesota comes to mind. Very cold and short growing season. Riparia does well. Roots more lateral, not very drought tolerant and not very tolerant to calcareous soils, but again, resistance to phylloxera and easy to propagate. Another natural grapevine is Vitis champani, tolerant to limestone soils, can be very vigorous, especially when well irrigated, considered less cold hardy than others, moderate phylloxera tolerance. And this one's neat. This one's native to Central Texas. A lot of calcareous soils in Central Texas, so it makes sense this one was kind of naturally, naturally came to be there. Vitis champani is Ramsey and Dog Ridge are actually just taken from this one. So we'll talk about how the other vines are kind of bred to get different rootstocks, but Vitis champani has great roots already that nurseries will just plant champani, grow it for the roots, and then just take the champani great roots and graft it on to a vine. And they call it, Ramsey, Dog Ridge, things like that. So how are rootstocks grown? I'll answer that question in a minute. How are rootstocks grown? A technique called stooling. And there's kind of an illustration at the bottom. You plant a grapevine, you grow it, you let it fill out, and then you actually just top chop it at the soil line. You can see in image 3 there. And then you have to mound dirt over that. Once you do that, the vine it still wants to push. It's like, hey, I just lost my scion. I need to push more scions. So the vine will start to just grow shoots through the dirt to photosynthesize and provide nutrients for itself. When it does that, within that stooling mound, those shoots will put off roots as well. I had to look this up because I couldn't quite understand what happens either. But so you see the grapevine is planted, it grows, and then it's cut, and then dirt is mounded over it. And as it starts to push shoots, those shoots push roots as well because it's still in the soil. And then you go through and you actually harvest those shoots you harvest those shoots with the roots. And that's how you get the rootstock. That's how you pull a rootstock from a mother vine. You see, we all can kind of see the vegetative side because we can grow a plant, harvest a shoot, and it's like you can propagate it more. We understand that. But when you grow for roots, it's the same thing. It's just you're trying to get root development. I want the roots. I don't care about the vegetative stuff. I just want the roots. And so that's how it's done. And nurseries will do this with, Native American grapes and then get the roots. And then once they have the roots, they graft it onto the European scions. I have a chat here. Let me check this question. Please comment on these rootstocks. Okay, yeah, we'll get to that, Bob. Okay. Okay, so that's kind of a backstory on the history, Native American grapevines, and how rootstocks are grown. Now we'll kind of talk about the specs of each one. Okay, so common rootstock crosses. Like I say, grapevines are bred for their rootstocks, and we'll cover that here. So Vitis riparia and Vitis rupestris. You take these, you breed them, pollen, flower, you grow them for the roots, and then this is the rootstock crosses that are made. Common rootstock crosses, 3309C, 10114M, and Schwartzman. You've probably seen these if you looked up grapevines at a nursery. So when you cross riparia and rupestris, you get rootstocks that prefer deep, fertile soil, low to moderate vigor to the scion, can hasten ripening. So your rootstock can actually influence ripening. You can make it quick or earlier. You can delay it. Same with bud break. And then some things about these crosses, they're resistant to phylloxera, but sometimes not so much nematodes. So these rootstocks can be susceptible to nematodes. And again, just the common crosses at the bottom you've probably seen before. Um, Berlandieri with Ruperia. So when you cross these two vines, you'll get rootstocks that have moderate to high vigor to the scion. So a lot of vigorous growth with these, well adapted to limestone soils. So if you have a pH of like 7.5 and above, and you have calcareous soil, this might be a good selection to use. Prefers well draining soil with moderate depth too. So does not tolerate a lot of wet feet, you would say. And then these are the common rootstock crosses. Teleki 5C, 16149C, Cobber 125AA, Cobber 5BB, one called Oppenheimer, and then 420AM. I don't know who names these, probably the breeders in the nurseries, but these are the names of the rootstocks that use this cross in their program. Okay, when you cross Berlandieri with rupestris, you get moderate to high scion growth, vigor through the scion as well, more drought tolerance, and better for warm and hot growing regions. So maybe if you're on the Red River or somewhere in South Oklahoma, and your soil aligns with this, you might select a rootstock through this program. Paulsen 1103, Richter 99, Richter 110, and Rugerii 140 are crosses, are grapevine crosses used, are grapevine rootstock used with these crosses. Okay. Yeah, environmental conditions. So there's a lot of specs here. I don't remember each rootstock and what it does offhand. I always have to look it up and reference what it does and how, whatnot. But for just a quick, for your information, drought tolerant rootstocks, here's a list of them. Paul's 1103, Ramsey 140R, Richter 110, and Richter 99. Grapevines tolerant to calcareous soils. Paul's 1103, Helikai 5C, Richter 110, Richter 99. I don't have to read them all. Influence on ripening. So rootstocks will advance ripening or delay ripening, depending on the rootstock, depending on what you're trying to do too. If you prefer an early harvest, you want to harvest in August, maybe pick a rootstock that will hasten ripening. If you want to delay ripening, rootstocks at the bottom there will delay ripening. I don't know if I covered clay soils in this one, Bob. Yeah, I didn't. Drought tolerance, calcareous soil. I'll have to look that one up and get back to you. Now, own rooted. So everything I covered previously up to now has been crosses, right? You breed vines, different roots grow, you harvest the roots, you graft them onto the vine. Well, some growers prefer own rooted vines when planting, and this is completely a matter of personal preference. The claimed benefits of own rooting is that it's easier on the soil and doesn't require as much nutrients because it's a natural grapevine. More tolerant to cold weather, especially here in northern Oklahoma. The winters are a little more harsher than down south. And so if you own root your vines and then they freeze back to the ground, that rootstock will then push its own scion. It's a natural, like it's its own root. It's going to push its own scion. That's just kind of an insurance. Like I hate that your vine died all the way back to the ground. But if you have a grafted grapevine and it freezes back to the ground, that native rootstock will then push its native scion. Does that make sense? If I were to take a Cabernet Sauvignon scion and I were to take an 1103P Paulsen, you know, rootstock and graft them together, okay, that rootstock is on Cabernet Sauvignon scion. It's going to push scions. If that Cabernet freezes back to the ground and just dies completely, but the rootstock is still alive, that native rootstock is going to push its native vine. You see, you just lost your Cabernet graft. The root is still alive, but the root is going to push what it naturally had, what it's naturally in the wild, how it grows. So when you own root your vines, there's no chance of like you're going to push your native scion. So that's the thing with the graft. If you graft your vines and it freezes back to the ground and you lose your scion, you lost your grapevine. You're not going to push what you had grafted. That's the pro and con here. Uh, Totally up to you and your site. There's a lot that goes into it, a lot of thinking, a lot of planning. But some growers in the state do choose own rooted for that matter. And you can buy Vitis vinifera own rooted vines. They are out there. Then the danger is that they're not going to tolerate the environments. You're going to get eaten with phylloxera. It's not going to survive the cold as much. That's that's the trade-off. So it's totally up to you and how you think and prepare and where you see your winery or vineyard going. Um, this is, if I didn't cover anything up, again, there's too many to know. I don't know these rootstocks offhand or what does what or how does what, but this is a little cheat sheet. On the left is the name of the rootstock. And the second to left column is the cross, and then everything to the right of that is kind of its influence, its vigor, its nematode resistance, soil adaptation, things like that. So when you go to select rootstock, find this chart. Nurseries usually have them, and then just kind of, and know your site too. Get a soil test done, get a water test done, know your soil texture, know your environmental conditions, high temperatures, low temperatures, rainfalls, things like that. And you just try to select the rootstock you think is best for your site. And this sheet is a great way to do it. Chat real fast. You found a need for silence that froze to the ground or stalks pushing their own roots. Can we use stems from Let me answer that at the end, Bob. And I think we're getting towards the end, actually. Again, yeah, know your site because that's how you select your rootstock. Everybody's going to be a little different. Conduct a soil test, water test, know your climate, and rootstock will greatly influence your vineyard. It's going to delay or hasten bud break. It's going to delay or hasten ripening, things like that. Vigor, scion. You can take rootstock A and rootstock B, put them on the same scion, and vigor will even be different. So rootstock influences vigor growth as well. Information credit. A lot of this information was taken from a book called The Grape Grower's Handbook by Ted Goldhammer. He's great, knows his stuff. I pulled a lot of information from there. And then with that, I think that does bring us to the end. So kind of a shorter webinar, but still a lot of information. And I will end the recording and open it up to a Q&A.
All
Oh,
right, Aaron.
sorry, hang on, I'm not yet. Recording stopped. There we go.